Yeah, so I finally made it. Woo, glad to be here. So I'm Karen Washington. I tell people I'm a farmer. I grow food. I feed people, body and mind. And so I want to start basically about, how I got started and how my friends got started. And it started with this picture of empty lots. This was 30 years ago. But if you look at this picture, I see this when I travel around the country in Baltimore and Philly, still these empty lots. And back then, I didn't know anything about farming. My parents weren't farmers. My grandparents weren't farmers. But yet, living there and seeing this gave me a picture of what industrial racism was and also what structural racism was all about. Seeing that large empty lots and waste disposal plants and incinerators are mostly in low-income neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color. And so what happened back in that day is that many people left. And as a result, those that could not leave stayed. And so they got together and they formed what we see here, community gardens and urban farms. And people will talk about this in terms of growing food, but it wasn't about that. It wasn't about growing food. It was about survival, first of all. It was about turning something that was devastating, something that was horrible, into something that was positive with limited resources. At that time, many cities throughout the country were going through financial hardships, and so it was people within their own community coming together to change those empty lots into community gardens. It also was a way of protecting the community, a safe haven for our seniors and for our youth. So in the beginning, it wasn't about growing food. It was about beautification and safety. But what comes with that is problems. And I say that because any land in a municipality has political consequences, which we found out. And so you would seem like, growing food in a city, especially in New York City, that the city would be appreciative of it. But there was a major, major problem because of the fact of development. And in 1998, when Giuliani tried to auction off 100 community gardens, all of a sudden that was a wake-up call for us. That was a wake-up call for many people in terms of turning people who were complacent and silent into activism. And so for me and for many of us, that was the beginning of community organizing and activism in the urban ag arena. And so we had to fight for leases. We didn't have leases at all. We had to navigate the political system to get the city to come with an agreement that now we have 4-year license. We don't have leases in New York City. We don't have to pay water, which we had to fight for, and we don't have to pay for insurance, another thing that we had to fight for. However, again, land in the city has political consequences. So when someone talked about zoning or why it's nonprofit, it's the fact that land in cities are very expensive, especially in New York City, and they're not going to give up that land. They're not going to give up that land. And so as we started to move on, we had to understand, well, how could we navigate the city and how could we make money besides just growing food? And so we found out that in New York City, you could have chickens. At one time, they told us that chickens and roosters were banned, but we went on the books to find out that we can have chickens, but we can't have roosters because of noise, exactly. And then we also were doing beekeeping and found out, again, the city stepped in and said we couldn't do beekeeping. And so as a result, we went in the books and found out that the health department had deemed beekeeping and bees as ferocious animals. And so, again, we had to educate the health department to let them know that if we don't have bees, we don't have food. So now we can have bees. However, again, it's very, very difficult to navigate income within the city limits. So how do you get around that is the fact that you have to say that you're making money and that money that you're being made is coming back into the community gardens and urban farms in order for that to be, negotiated. And so far, it's winning so far. However, I think what we found most of all is the fact that we've learned a lot about food justice and social justice with working in a community garden and the importance of social capital. I think that's something that's missing when we talk about urban agriculture and when we talk about agriculture in general. And also, if you look at the word agriculture, the fact that culture is so, so important. And I feel that these urban farms that are located in cities and community gardens really, really highlight the fact that it's a microcosm of different cultures that come into play with regards to food. And also talking about the interaction between food and culture and food justice and social justice, which is really, really important. Folks, we have a problem. We have a problem in the food system, as everyone knows. The average age of a farmer is now 59 years of age. So where are we going to get the next group of farmers? You have a lot of people in urban areas that want to be farmers, especially people of color, okay? People of color. And for us, and I'll show you at the next slide, for us, thinking about working in urban areas has been a stepping stone for us to think about how we can lease land in peri-urban areas, but yet not lose sight of where we came from and the fact that growing food has such an impact on the new generation of young folks who are inquisitive about growing food, that intergenerational aspect of the wisdom of so many older farmers passing on that wisdom to younger farmers that we're seeing in New York City. And so there was a time now that, we've been doing this for so long that me and my friends started to think about moving on up, thinking about starting something that was close to the city, that we can still have the relationship to the city, but also to continue to work on our mission and vision of food and social justice, but in the context of growing food for profit, to be a for-profit farm. So it started with the 6 of us here in this picture here, thinking about how can we go to the next level of growing food in a peri-urban area, but be a for-profit farm and not a nonprofit farm, whereby if we were still in a city, it would be nonprofit. And so it started first with a dream and planning. And so in New York City, we're very lucky to have a program called the Farms Beginning Program. And what it does is that it helps farmers who have an idea about growing food to help them and see if this is something that is viable for them. So again, I tell people, if you have a dream, dream big. And so during that Farms Beginning program back in 2012, we had to, start thinking about exactly what would that look like. And so it was, first of all, thinking about a mission and a vision. Thinking about, why do you want to farm? Thinking about an action plan, a budget, startup budget, your SWOT, which are, your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, a marketing plan, and also a management plan, and doing a presentation. And so the first thing they had us to do was to dream big. And I say dreaming big is very, very important, because if you have the desire to want to farm and you keep it within, no one's going to hear it. No one's going to hear it. And so for the past 3 years, we were going up and down the Hudson Valley trying to find farmland. The closer you are to New York City, the more expensive it was. Going to a meeting one time, a land meeting, talking about land, and having someone tell us that the land in Westchester was $1 million, and for us not to farm, but you're farming. But, having those sort of things, said to you. And then again, going up the Hudson Valley and really finding that land was extremely expensive, or if you wanted land, someone was living on the property, you had to take care of, the elder person that was there. It was a lot of problems until one day, again, dreaming big, putting it out there that you need land, because every place I would go and every conference I would attend, I would see younger people getting land and I wasn't getting any land, and I was saying, how come I'm not getting any land and you getting some land? And so I happened to sit next to Steve Rosenberg, who is the director of Scenic Hudson, and he said, Karen, if you're really, really serious, I have a person you need to speak to. Now, whenever someone tells you something, you have the the little devil and the angel on your shoulder. And the devil is saying, don't call a person because, you know, it's going to end up in bad news. You know, that voice that you've done it so many times. And then the other voice that says, why don't you do it? You have nothing to lose. And, you know, you got like a little nervousness, a pit in your stomach. But finally, I picked up that phone and I called. And sure enough, I was able to speak to this person who was just starting a venture called the Chester Agricultural Center, which is located in Chester, New York. It is a list of investors who purchased over 120 acres of land up in Chester, New York. Now I tell people, for me going from the Bronx to Chester is an hour and 15 minutes. For me going from the Bronx to Brooklyn is an hour and 90 minutes. And so you can see the difference. And so if you look at this picture, this is what some of the drawings that we did. And if you look close, I think it said that we will be on the land in 2014, that we want to be able to have a house, that we want to be able to have chickens and really continue to work on our mission of food and social justice. And again, if you're thinking about farming, it's good that you have something that you can relate to. Write down your dreams, your visions, write down exactly what you want your farm to look like, which is really, really helpful. And so, sure enough, we were able to get on this land, Chester Agricultural Center. We have 3 acres of land. The land cost us about $490 a year. So that means it comes out to almost, do the math, $1,500 a year. But also what's good about this is the infrastructure. So it was a place that already had a cooling barn, already had a washing station, so which is really, really important if you're thinking about it. And again, when we first started growing on that soil, which is muck soil, 40% organic matter. So we grow the best vegetables and we grow the best weeds. And learning, serious. And so learning how to navigate your soil was really, really crazy. And the fact that we were growing on raised beds up in a county where you had these old-time farmers that would laugh at us because we brought our skills from growing in community gardens up to this muck area where they just grow in rows, but we grow in raised beds. And then we did drip irrigation. And again, they laughed at us because the muck soil has so much moisture. It was pushing moisture out. But, you know, because of climate change, things are changing. So our first year, you know, when they saw what we were growing and how we were growing, we really earned their respect because they didn't do irrigation and we did, and our plants survived. So getting that sort of understanding, and like I said, it's a for-profit farm. One thing you have to think about is also, so you get this land, and you say you're given land, the thing that you have to consider and people don't consider is housing, okay? That's a main obstacle when it comes to getting farmers land. They might have the ability to get land, but if you don't have housing, that's a big issue, especially if housing isn't close by. Either you have to trek long distances, or in the end, you'll burn out because you'll have to travel, you know, back and forth. And so we got this land, and so the next thing we had to do was thinking about funding. Again, a for-profit farm. And so it's good to have young people that know about social media. And so we did crowdfunding. We did an Indiegogo campaign to collect $50,000. And it's always good to know people in high places and friends and family. And we were able to accomplish that because, again, from our community garden skills, we needed to get a tractor. So we got a BCS, a walk-behind tractor. Again, you have to think about seeds. You know, when you grow food in the city, seeds are usually donated. This time you have to buy your own seeds. You have to buy your own, trays. And then also you have to start paying for water. We pay for water, we pay for electricity. So at the end of the year, our bill is close between $6,000 to $7,000 a year on that land. So this was our slogan. We traded in our Metro cards to tractors to sort of, not forgetting where we came from and really bring the essence of food and social justice on the farm. And so we work cooperatively with three other farmers. Three other farm groups are on the Chester Agricultural Center. And we continue to encourage people because there's land available. Again, the negative point is housing. So if you're interested in coming to the Chester Agricultural Center up in Chester, New York, we have land, but we don't have housing. And so how do we work collectively? Yes, it's been one of these days. How do we work collectively is making decisions. So an advice I like to give all of you is that you can't farm alone. This is not happening. And it's good to farm with a group of people because everyone brings a specific amount of expertise. And so Michaela was a former chef, a business person, so she brings that expertise. And both Jane, Lori, and myself, we came from Caspis, which is in Santa Cruz, California. And so we learn how to work collectively. I tend to do more of the agritourism. Lori's expertise is in flowers, and Jane's expertise is in vegetable and crops. So it's really, really good to have people with different expertise to come together. But again, at the end of the day, it boils down to decision making. And people say, well, how do you get along? Well, you have to come, believe it or not, I know it sounds simple and I know it sounds corny, but you have to come from a position of love. And I say that in terms of respect, because at the end of the day, these are the people that you have to work with. And if you really care about them and have respect, then you have to disagree to disagree. And then building communities. And so what this farm has done for us is really bridge between urban and peri-urban, because in the city, there's so many children who've never seen farm, never seen a farm, never seen a farmer, never seen women farmers, never seen black women farmers, never seen black women LGBTQ farmers. And so it really puts a face, to what farming should be, because if we have a diversity of plants, then we need a diversity of farmers. And so we continue to work together to make sure that we continue to build community. And so when it comes to making money, you got to think outside the raised beds. So it's not about just growing food and thinking you're going to make money. It's not happening. So you have to be really, really creative. You have to make money in terms of farmers market, in terms of tours, in terms of restaurants, in terms of doing dances, in terms of dinners, in terms of even workshops. We also teach at Farm School, which is the New York School of Urban Agriculture. Again, that's income generating for us. And then we have a plant sale at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year to sort of generate money. And at the end, because they told me I got 5 more minutes, who are we? We are women who farm. So questions, and here we are. These are the hands that bind us.